Tonight on Top Story, opposition MPP fires back at Electoral Commission, calling its response to the petition before the Supreme Court as full of arrogance.
When you read their response, you will see that they have very little to say about the details of the case. They spend more time and energy debating the vocabulary by quoting definitions of adjectives from dictionaries than they spend defending the Ghanaian people.
We'll get a legal perspective on this. My name is Francis Alban. Top Stories brought to you by Bond Financial Services. Your success, our passion. Belacco Mineral Water, priced rice for every pocket, as well as myjoyonline.com and Blue Rose Limited. The opposition New Patriotic Party has fired back at the Electoral Commission that it is contesting. The party has no proper evidence to back its claims that the elections were rigged. The MPP says it is more than ready to face the Electoral Commission squarely at the Supreme Court with what it describes as more evidence to back its case. The party is contesting the results declared by the EC boss Dr. Kojo Afarijan on the 9th of December that made President Mahama the winner with 50.7% of the total votes cast. The EC, which filed its defense to the suit on Tuesday, is insisting the NPP has no case and is requesting the Supreme Court to dismiss its petition. Addressing a news conference at its headquarters in Accra today, party chairman J. Bechibilamte said he is confident Nana Akufo-Addo will be victorious in court when the case is heard.
When you read their response, you will see that they have very little to say about the details of the case. They spend more time and energy debating the vocabulary by quoting definitions of adjectives from dictionaries than they spend defending the Ghanaian people. Why, despite the EC being funded by the taxpayers to the tune of hundreds of millions of cedis, they have run an election in which 1 in every 8 votes will, inshallah, be thrown out. Their document, we believe, was very arrogant and irreverent and offered no justification for the flaws other than the pathetic excuses about signatures not passing through 3 sheets of carbon paper and suggestions that nearly 1 million extra voters were added to the rolls late because they were Foreign Service or NGO officials, students abroad on government scholarship, or international peacekeepers. The EC in its response certainly did not explain why they chose to annul the results of certain polling stations where there were minor violations of verification or overvoting, yet over 1.3 million were declared valid without any problem.
Well, later after that press conference, Joy News' Beauty Sedu caught up with the NPP national chairman, who dismissed suggestions the NPP is inciting its supporters for violence should the party lose the case in court.
When you read their response, you will see that they have very little to say about the details of the case. They spend more time and energy debating the vocabulary.
Every charge that we make in our case is fully supported by the pink sheets and by the evidence of persons who took part in the process. We would not likely make a charge to say that at this place.
What about the issue about date tampering with the register, which they have also rejected?
Well, I mean, what we've said is that something extremely odd occurred, that they published 2 numbers. They have come back to say, yes, they admit that it happened, but it was a mistake. And now, if you make a mistake like that, what other mistakes have you not made?
How reliable is your evidence?
Inshallah. I mean, it's all on the blue sheets and what we call the blue sheets, which are actually pink.
The Electoral Commission has also asked you to provide specific polling stations. Why don't you do that?
We will. We will. We will.
You could have put that out today too.
These are the evidences that you're going to provide in court as the court case proceeds.
From your presentation, you seem to suggest that the only way the NPP would see justice is when Nana Akufo-Addo is declared president.
From my speech, I was very careful to continue to say exactly what we have said from the very beginning, that the justice that we seek is the strengthening of the fact that it is the voter who matters.
From your actions, I mean your press conferences and all that, don't you think people may interpret it to mean that you may not really have confidence in the judicial system?
I don't think that we are showing any signs of non-confidence. I believe that what we are showing, in fact, is and telling people that we do have the evidence of the polling notices, the returns, the pink sheets.
Others may think that what you're doing, you're just inciting your supporters for violence in case you lose the court case.
It is we who work with the police to make sure that no violence came to the city.
So for you, this is not inciting anybody?
Why am I inciting?
And you heard the NPP's national chairman, Jacob Echebelamtwe, in that interview with my colleague, Beatrice Edu. We're scheduled to speak to the national chairman again to get some clarity on the suggestions that he made at a press conference today. Unfortunately, we are unable to reach him on the phone lines. But we have a legal practitioner, Mr. Gordon Adawene, who joins us to give us a lot more legal perspective as to what has transpired today and the NPP's strong case. Thanks for joining us today on Top Story, Mr. Adawene. Now, this is clearly a huge public interest case. Is it fair to fault the NPP for, as it were, seeking to explain this case in the media?
Good evening to you and to your listeners. Well, you are right. It is a matter with high public interest in it. It is therefore impracticable to say that individuals or groups, including political parties and their members, or even officials, should not discuss the probable outcome of the case that is before the Supreme Court. But I believe that is not really the question. The question has to do with who is the true winner of the election and deserves to be so declared and so on. And I believe the stage we have reached now really has to do with the final decision concerning this issue. The Electoral Commission has declared a result. That declaration is being contested, and I believe that the petitioners do understand that the media practitioners and the general public at large do not have the constitutional, legal, and institutional capacity or competence, so to say, to make that final determination of the dispute. I believe it is because of this that the petitioners are in court, asking the Supreme Court, which they believe has the constitutional competence and mandate to decide the matter, to do so. One would therefore have expected that having done that, we all exercise restraint, even as we may discuss the probable outcome of the case, and then await the final decision of the Supreme Court.
Because again, I was even seeking to ask the follow-up question that in as much as they seek to explain their case before us in the media, they seek, within these explanations that they give, lies accusations that seem to prejudge the issue in court, when we do know that these judges who preside over cases in the Supreme Court are not influenced by issues that are peddled in the public domain, in the public domain.
Yes, you may be right. Judges, by their training, by their experience, are supposed not to be swayed by comments outside of the court. They are to determine the issues of law as addressed to them by the parties in court. That notwithstanding, the principle has developed over centuries that having gone to court with an issue and submitted yourself and your case to the authority of the court, you show some reverence and respect for that institution, and then allow it to decide the matter according to law. And that is the principle that has always guided the practice of law in this country. But again, one may argue, if you look at the Constitution, it talks about justice emanating from the people, in whose name that justice has to be dispensed by the judiciary. Proceeding from that basis, one may argue, why can't the people express views about matters that are even before the court? But as I have said, there is a principle that has been developed, and that principle has been developed for the main reason of ensuring that the justice which is being dispensed in the name of the people is dispensed in a way that will be satisfactory. And I would wish that we all support the cause of justice by exercising reasonable restraint while we await the determination of the matter by the 5 wise justices of the Supreme Court.
And so with this accusations that keep coming from the NPP, does this have any adverse implications on the case in question?
Well, let's look at it from this perspective. And for want of a better way to put it, kindly permit me to put it this way. If the NPP had its way, I believe Nana Addo would have been declared the president and installed the president by now. That has not happened. Even though the NPP believes that Nana Addo ought to have been declared and ought to have been installed as the president. Now, what that means is that they do recognize that the rest of us who are not the judges of the Supreme Court cannot determine the sufficiency of whatever evidence that they have, or even the existence or non-existence of any such evidence. They also believe that we do not have the competence to determine the legal weight to give to whatever piece of evidence that may be established, and the legal effects of such evidence for that matter. It is the reason why the matter is in court. So, I mean, I would want us to look at it from this perspective and then ask the question. So if these things are well known to the NPP and its legal advisors, the question that one may ask, what is the objective of these press conferences? I don't have the answer to that question.
And certainly neither do I, but unfortunately we don't have the NPP's national chairman, who was actually able to speak to us here on Top Story, but unfortunately weren't able to reach him. And that's all for Top Story this evening. My name is Francis Aban. Top Story is brought to you by Bond Financial Services, your success, our passion, Belacqua Mineral Water, the new generation mineral water, as well as MyJoyOnline.com and Blue Rose Limited.